Legislators pass a bill to reform the Social Workers Registration Board. A crackdown on a syndicate that helped non-locals work illegally in the city. And President Xi Jinping holds talks with his Kazakh counterpart in Astana. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The Social Workers Registration Amendment Bill was passed at the Legislative Council today. Member numbers on the Social Workers Registration Board will be increased to 27 people. 30% of the board members will be elected under the new bill. The bill will be gazetted on Friday. And under the new bill, social workers found guilty of endangering national security will be deregistered permanently. Mimosa Ngai reports.
I declare the motion passed.
The Social Workers Registration Bill was passed after a majority of lawmakers supported it. The proposed amendment of the bill came after Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Soon said in May that the Social Workers Registration Board had departed from the spirit of the bill. Under the amendment, the Social Workers Registration Board will have more members than previously, from 15 to 27. Among them, 8 members will still be elected onto the board. The number of government appointees will be increased to 17, meaning 30% of the members will be elected. But the government stressed that 14 board members must be social workers. All members must take an oath of allegiance to the HKSAR. The registration of social workers will be permanently removed if they are convicted of a national security offence, indecent assault, and ill-treating a child. Some lawmakers who are also social workers expressed support for the reforms.
In 2002, offence for endangering national security was included in Schedule 2. 2 years have passed. The board still hasn't established a mechanism to ensure the effective implementation of this. It is because some people deliberately delay the process.
Secretary for Labour and Welfare Chris Soon thanked Leshko for passing the motion.
And put the development of the profession back on the right track. Adhering to the spirit of the ordinance, the social work profession will have the overall social interest as their priority at all times.
Soon said the new bill will take effect on July 5th. Mimosa Ngai, TVB News.
In a case that saw the Immigration Department crack down on a syndicate helping non-locals work illegally in Hong Kong, the ringleader has been sentenced to 41 months in prison after being convicted of conspiracy to defraud. 18 people have been arrested so far.
Forged documents, including bank statements and water bills, were among the evidence seized during the operation. The Immigration Department said the fraud cases came to light when they vetted visa applications of some foreign domestic helpers. Some documents were found to be problematic. After an investigation, the department flagged 40 suspicious cases involving 26 helpers. The Immigration Department said they found that some electricity and water bills bore the same charge number and payable amount. The same typos were also found in the fixed deposit notices of different employers. After verifying with relevant companies, these documents were found to have been tampered with or forged. The Immigration Department later uncovered that a 63-year-old female foreign domestic helper agent had obtained the personal data of some employers of foreign domestic helpers through a 59-year-old man. They include copies of identity cards. The documents were then used to apply for visas for foreign domestic helpers for them to stay and work in Hong Kong. The Immigration Department said applicants must pay up to $40,000 to the syndicate, whether the visa is granted or not. It's estimated that the group made a total profit of more than $1 million. During the operation, 18 people, including 14 helpers, were arrested. 6 of them were convicted, including the agent, the syndicate's leader, and the 59-year-old man. Authorities issued a reminder that anyone making a false statement to an immigration officer is liable to a maximum penalty of a $150,000 fine and imprisonment for 14 years.
Since June 17th, police have arrested 300 people suspected of committing fraud or money laundering, involving a total of $370 million and at least 40 victims. A cache of forged documents were seized. The documents helped fraudsters pose as officials from the mainland's Public Security Bureau. A total of 220 scam cases were involved. One of those arrested was a 23-year-old computer programmer who was allegedly involved in more than 80 fraud cases, in which he impersonated mainland officials to swindle money. Other cases involved online trading and job hunting related scams. President Xi Jinping, now on a visit to Kazakhstan, today held talks with his Kazakh counterpart in Astana. Xi said he supports Kazakhstan joining the BRICS group. The two countries also set a goal of doubling two-way trade. Later this week, the two leaders will attend the annual Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in the Kazakh capital. Danny Zhou has the story.
Today, a grand welcoming ceremony was thrown at Kazakhstan's presidential palace, also known as a quarter residence, for President Xi, who arrived here yesterday for a state visit. 6 fighter jets flew overhead, leaving behind trails of red and yellow, which are the colors of the Chinese national flag. Accompanied by the solemn national anthems of both countries, Xi and Tokayev shook hands with each other's accompanying officials, exchanged greetings and reviewed the Guard of Honor. This is Xi's 5th visit to the Central Asian country, which is an important node on the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. More than a decade ago, it was here that Xi officially launched the BRI, China's sprawling development project that has poured over $9 billion investment in Kazakhstan since 2013. The two heads of state yesterday jointly attended an opening ceremony of the China-Europe Trans-Caspian International Transportation Route via video link. After group meetings on issues of common concern, a joint statement was signed to bring their relationship to new heights. Xi vowed to deepen cooperation in traditional areas as well as key fields like critical minerals, new energy and digital economy, and stressed his support for Kazakhstan's inception to the BRICS. China has emerged as Kazakhstan's top trade partner, with bilateral trade turnover skyrocketing to $41 billion last year. And the two leaders agreed to set the new goal of doubling their two-way trade as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin landed in Astana this morning to attend the annual SCO session, seeking to harden anti-Western alliances across Eurasia. The Central Asian countries have been balancing their relations with Russia and China while remaining on good terms with the West. The Kremlin said that Putin will hold a series of bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the summit and meet with Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan to discuss bilateral relations and Ukraine. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is also expected to attend the event, which might be his best chance to speak to Putin. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
About 250,000 people have been ordered to leave the southern Gaza district of Khan Yunis on Israeli orders. Israel says its forces are seeking out fighters from Hamas and other groups that have regrouped in Khan Yunis. Meanwhile, the deputy leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon says the group will stop fighting Israel if there is a full ceasefire in Gaza. Nasri Karim with more.
This is where 62-year-old dermatologist Hossam Hamdan and many of his family were sheltering when an Israeli airstrike hit the building in central Gaza. It was meant to be a safe zone after Israel ordered the Hamdan family and thousands of others to evacuate parts of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Hossam and 8 of his family were killed, along with 3 others. 5 children and 3 women were among the dead. Further north near Gaza City, authorities say at least 17 people were killed in Zaytun. This as tens of thousands of Palestinians flee the south, some on donkeys, some pushing hospital trolleys, after yet another Israeli order to evacuate as the Israeli Defense Force target Hamas fighters who have regrouped in the area. Nuha al-Bana, initially displaced from Gaza City, said she is on the move for the 4th time since the start of the war. We have been humiliated, she said. We are fed up with our situation. There is no proper food, no proper water, no proper bathrooms, no proper place to sleep. We experience fear and terror while sleeping. How does a tent protect against shrapnel or bullets? With insufficient aid getting through and infrastructure destroyed, the UN's Humanitarian Reconstruction Coordinator for Gaza, Sigrid Kaag, says humanitarian assistance will be needed for years.
The war has not merely created the most profound of humanitarian crises, it has unleashed a maelstrom of human misery. 1.9 million people are now displaced across Gaza. and I'm deeply concerned about reports of new evacuation orders issued into the area of Khan Yunis. Its impact on the civilian population is deep. In Gaza, nowhere is safe.
Israel is reportedly winding down operations in Gaza, possibly preparing troops for an offensive against Lebanon's Hezbollah, which has been exchanging fire with Israel across the northern border since October 7th. In an interview with the Associated Press, Hezbollah's deputy leader Sheikh Naim Qassem said his group would halt all hostilities if a full ceasefire is implemented in Gaza. He also had a warning for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying Hezbollah would not be limited in how it would fight should war break out in Lebanon. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Britain's Labour Party is set to sweep to power with a record number of seats at Thursday's UK general election. That's according to a forecast by polling company Survation. Survation's central scenario showed Keir Starmer's Labour winning 484 of the 650 seats in Parliament. This is far more than the 418 won by the party's former leader, Tony Blair, in his famous 1997 landslide win, and the most in its history. The Conservatives, who have been in power for the last 14 years, were predicted to win just 64 seats, which would be the fewest since the party was founded in 1834. The right-wing Reform UK party, led by ex-UKIP leader Nigel Farage, were projected to win 7 seats. The Survation analysis used a technique that estimates public opinion at a local level from large national samples. Pollsters describe it as a model that uses polling data rather than a poll itself. Other such analyses have shown smaller margins of victory for Labour, but none have shown a different overall outcome. And still ahead, Donald Trump's sentencing in his hush money case delayed until September 18th. Flooding continues in parts of China, with Hunan being one of the hard-hit areas. And $12 million worth of drugs in a joint operation by Hong Kong and Australian authorities. Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden will meet with congressional leaders and Democratic governors, sit for a network TV interview, and hold a press conference in the coming days. The events are designed to push back against growing pressure for the 81-year-old to step aside in the 2024 presidential race after his disastrous performance in last week's debate with Republican Donald Trump. For the first time, a Democratic member of Congress has publicly called on Biden to drop out of the race. NBC has more.
Tonight, President Biden's political future at the center of a storm.
We're going to face a tough summer.
As his only public event today focused on extreme weather and emergency management. For 5 days, the president has not answered reporters' questions.
Mr. President, will you drop out of the race?
He has relied on scripted remarks using a teleprompter.
We've invested a record more than $50 billion.
The White House said today it wants to turn the page after a debate performance crisis that some Democrats say has raised questions.
I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition?
Today, the first public call to exit the race from a House Democrat.
We must call on him to give the ultimate sacrifice of saying that he will step aside because that's the best way to save our country.
Another Democrat with a warning.
I just want him to appreciate at this time just how much it impacts not just his race, but all the other races coming in November.
At the White House briefing today,
he had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode.
Under repeated questioning, Karine Jean-Pierre defended the president as physically and mentally fit.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not.
The New York Times reports that in closed-door meetings, several current and former officials noticed the president increasingly appeared confused or listless or would lose the thread of conversations. The White House says the president will do an on-camera interview Friday and a press conference next week. Tomorrow, he's set to hold a video call with Democratic governors and talk with top congressional leaders for the first time since last week's debate.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump's sentencing for his conviction on criminal charges stemming from hush money paid to a porn star has been delayed until September 18th. That's less than 7 weeks before the U.S. election. A New York judge delayed the sentencing to weigh the possible impact of Monday's landmark Supreme Court ruling that presidents are entitled to immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts. Tracy Furness has more.
Trump had been scheduled to face sentencing on July 11th for his New York conviction on felony charges of falsifying business records to cover up an alleged sex scandal. He denies any wrongdoing. The postponement sets the sentencing for September 18th at the earliest, well after this month's Republican National Convention, where Trump is set to formally accept the party's nomination for president in this year's race. A Supreme Court ruling Monday granted broad immunity protections to presidents while restricting prosecutors from citing any official acts as evidence in trying to prove a president's unofficial actions violated the law.
Judge Juan M. Merchan agreed to push back that date after Trump's attorneys argued that a recent Supreme Court ruling granting broad immunity to presidents invalidated the verdict. The Manhattan District Attorney has called that argument, quote, without merit, but they agreed to the delay as both sides present motions on the matter. The delay means that Trump won't know of his sentencing as he's formally nominated at the Republican National Convention, which starts in Milwaukee on July 15th. And it leaves open the possibility that he could be ordered to jail during a critical stretch of his campaign.
Trump faces an uphill battle getting the hush money conviction overturned, as much of the conduct at issue in the case predates his time in office. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
China and the Philippines held a meeting in Manila on Tuesday to try to ease mounting tensions following their worst confrontation in the disputed South China Sea. The 9th meeting of the bilateral consultation mechanism was co-chaired by Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Chen Xiaodong and Philippine Foreign Undersecretary Maria Teresa Lazaro. Reports say the two sides had candid and constructive exchanges of views, focusing on managing the situation on Renai Reef. On June 17th, Philippine and Chinese vessels collided near the reef, causing injuries to Philippine Navy personnel. Chinese vessels have surrounded Philippine Marines aboard the grounded warship at Renai Reef to prevent delivery of food and other supplies. China reiterated its sovereignty over the Nansha Islands, which includes Renai Reef and its adjacent waters. Torrential rain has pounded Hunan province in central China. Pinjiang County witnessed the heaviest flood in 70 years. While downpours have abated now, cleanup and relief efforts are underway.
In the Meluo River of Yueyang City in Hunan Province, the water level swelled to its highest in 70 years, exceeding the warning line for 72 consecutive hours. In Pinjiang County, located in the river's upper stream, more than 364,000 people were affected, with more than 3,200 houses damaged as of Tuesday. Multiple neighborhoods inundated. This resident said with food in short supply, a supermarket owner shared some stock with them. After the weather conditions improved on Wednesday, floodwater also receded. Residents worked to clear the mud and silt with water pumping equipment deployed. While some districts remain out of power, authorities said reconstruction work is underway. Jiangxi Province too has been devastated by flooding since June 22nd, affecting more than 1.35 million people. The local government said rescue efforts are ongoing as water levels in the region's river continue to rise.
In a joint operation between Hong Kong Customs and Australian police, 2 Hong Kong men were arrested on suspicion of drug trafficking involving meth and cocaine valued at over $12 million. Hong Kong authorities were alerted by the Australian police of suspected drugs hidden in Australia-bound air cargo from Hong Kong in early June. The goods were declared to be stone statues. 6 kilograms of suspected cocaine and 1 kilogram of meth were later uncovered. 2 Hong Kong men aged 17 and 27 were apprehended in Australia and Hong Kong, respectively. Customs officers believe drug trafficking syndicates arrange for members to handle their drugs in Australia and receive profit margins of up to 4 or 5 times. A university student was earlier acquitted of rioting in connection with a protest at the Chinese University of Hong Kong in 2019. The Department of Justice appealed against the acquittal, and today the Court of Appeal decided to order a retrial. The protest took place on November 12, 2019. Protesters threw objects from the No. 2 bridge of Sewage Quay onto the Tolo Highway and hurled petrol bombs and bricks at police officers. In 2021, a district court judge ruled that the prosecution did not have sufficient evidence to prove that 24-year-old Polytechnic University student Li Chunho had directly or indirectly participated in the riots. Considering the appeal of the Department of Justice, judges from the Court of Appeal had questions about the defendant's evidence who did not testify in court. The retrial is set to begin in the district court in September. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.